Hello and welcome everyone. On behalf of the GSS Career Development Subcommittee, I welcome all the panelists and participants in today's workshop. I want to share a few notes and ground rules with everyone in attendance today. Please note that all views and opinions shared in today's workshop are those of the panelists themselves and not the organizations they represent or have worked for. In addition, any mention of a company by a panelist is not an endorsement of that given company or brand. To ensure that the workshop is a welcoming environment for everyone, we want to briefly go over the code of conducts. Today's event will be recorded. Just a reminder for this Zoom meeting, please keep your cameras and microphones turned off at all time. Failure to do so might result into non-participation in this event. We have already collected questions from all of you for our panelists today. However, if you would like, we welcome you to ask questions to our panelists by dropping them in the chat box to everyone. However, if you are disrespectful in this space, we will ask you to leave the workshop. So please be mindful of others. Our committee members will be collecting questions from the chat box. You do not need to write down notes or resources. The recording of the workshop will be uploaded on the GSS Career Development Workshop series webpage and YouTube channel, and you can visit the recording of the workshop anytime in the future. Today's panel discussion has been organized by the GSS Career Development Subcommittee together with Jarson, who is the co-chair of the committee. I, Anindya Ganguly, am co-hosting this event. However, every member of the committee who has been showcased here has been instrumental in making this event happen. Also, special thanks to Jessica, who is the acting director of the Engagement and Early Career Programs of the GSA, and Balint, who is Engagement Professional Development Program Coordinator. So with that, I would like to welcome our panelists today. Today we have Dr. Siddharth Manvati, who is the co-founder and CEO of ClearMeet, Dr. Adam Amara, who is the co-founder of Turing Biosystems, and Dr. Tere Williams, founder of Simony Petrek Co. So welcome to the panel today. So we have categorized a few questions that I would like to ask to the panelists. So let's begin today's discussion by first allowing our panelists to briefly introduce themselves by telling me their career choices. So you can please discuss your journey from academic research to your current positions. So I would start with Dr. Manvati.
Thanks, Anindya, and welcome everyone to this panel discussion. It's an opportunity given by the whole team at US, and I feel that it's an opportunity to discuss our runway and how it has been, and it gives us a time to think back where we have reached and what all gains and pains we have taken to come this side. And just to give you guys an idea, myself Siddharth, I'm the co-founder at ClearMeet, and this is my 5th startup and my 2nd startup when it comes to the domain of biotechnology. The career choice of biotechnology was something which was a conscious decision, but the post choices after achieving a PhD have been something which have been motivated by various ground factors, be it bridging the gap between research and its market application, or be it identifying the right solution. So with this, thank you, and looking forward for more questions from you guys.
So with that, I would like to move to Dr. Adam Amara for the same question. Like,
yeah, hi. No problem. Yeah, hi. So Adam, I'm more based onto the European side, even though we work quite a bit with the US. As you may hear from my accent, I started my life and training in France, in biochemistry and medicine. And then I moved into a PhD in synthetic and systems biology in the UK at University of Manchester, and then did a postdoctoral fellowship at the cancer branch of the WHO, not too far from Switzerland, in France again. And this eventually led me with this experience working with clinicians, working with pharma and biotech company in those different academic environments, made me realize a few issues that were present in that space. And I always loved the science. I always loved software engineering, bioinformatics, and at the same time was really interested to solve real-world problem, and that got me into building Turing biosystems. And yeah, we'll see later on in more details on things.
Thank you, Dr. Amara. So we'll now move on to Dr. Williams. The same question.
Thank you. So I just want to thank you guys for inviting me to come. I'm happy to share my journey, and it's soon to be Dr. Williams. The one thing that I did not disclose is that I'm a PhD candidate, so I will be defending before the summer is out. That said, I was a non-traditional student in the sense that my advanced degree came after taking a 10-year break. So my senior year of college, I was drafted to the WNBA. I played for the Phoenix Mercury, and that started a professional basketball career overseas. When I came back, I actually decided not to go into science, but music. So I was a jazz singer in Montreal for 3 years before I was deported from Canada. All of this is actually really important because I learned from that Canadian deportation. That was really my first step into entrepreneurship. I had a job, I had just bought a brand new car and had a car payment. So I had done nothing wrong, and the Canadian officials couldn't keep me out. So I essentially started ride shares, commuting between Boston and Montreal, selling seats in my vehicle. And I was able to pay off my car and an apartment for a period of time. And what's really important, and I bring this scenario up, is because I think that was the first time to that scale that I was able to identify a need in the market to service in a large way, or a much larger way, a need that was in the community. And I would also like to say that that was 2009, early 2010, before Uber, Lyft, and all these other rideshare services. So that told me later on that I was able to identify what they call unicorn markets, and capitalize off of it. So I am a PhD candidate now. I returned to school in 2012 to graduate from undergrad. I participated in the post-baccalaureate research and education program that's sponsored by the NIH at Virginia Tech. And then I was admitted into Albert Einstein College of Medicine in 2014. I've been very busy since I've been there, and we'll get into that a little bit more, I'm sure, as the day goes on.
Thank you, Tere. So next, I would like to ask, like, where did you get your entrepreneurial spirits? So I will start with Dr. Amara.
Sorry, could you repeat, because I have like works next door,
Yeah.
and the noise. Okay, sorry.
It's fine. I was wondering, like, what is the source of your entrepreneurial spirits? Like, where did you get it from?
Yeah, that's a very good question. To be honest, I think like many people, I'm a son of immigrants in France. So my parents are from North Africa, and yeah, I've seen, my dad was an architect in Algeria and arrived in France. I had to do a restaurant from nowhere, and then yeah, had to get through in life somehow. And so I think it was one of my first exposure to entrepreneurship, but more related to survival, I think, entrepreneurship. But eventually, you know, they got well enough in life. And on the second piece, I've always been very attracted by this, at the same time as science. And I've been lucky that it crossed path. When I got in the UK, I got to interact with startups, with venture capitalists, and it's, yeah, got there eventually.
Can you narrow down like the areas in biotech industry where you start your entrepreneurial journey? How did you narrow it down?
Yeah. So for me, I always wanted to work into the bioinformatics and computational biology space. And another piece was that I always wanted that to have an impact, because that's what I loved in terms of what I love to do. And the other piece, I wanted it to have an impact on a large scale. And I very quickly ended up into oncology, and notably because I went at the cancer branch of the WHO, and I realized the scale of the issue around oncology, and notably immuno-oncology. So with experience, basically, I don't think it's really I would not dare that I had like say I had a plan. I had a perfect plan or anything. It was very iterative. I think I didn't have an exciting life as theory, but I got to just iterate on things, and it's kind of got down into the spaces. So yeah, immuno-oncology, generally speaking, is what got me there.
Thank you, Dr. Amara. So I would now move on to Terry Williams with the same questions, like where did you get your entrepreneurial spirit from, and how did you narrow down the area on which you wanted to have your company?
Right. So one of the things that I didn't mention is that Simon Peter K Company is a consulting company, and that actually plays a large part into what I'm doing now. So I am co-founder and CEO of Dub Biologics, which is a biotechnology startup that is working on a single asset in 2 different programs. I am an immunologist by training. I knew once I returned to school in 2012 and had to take that final biology course to get my degree. That course was immunology. It's the toughest course known throughout the biology department. And I loved it. I almost failed that course, I should say, but just understanding the nuances which are ever changing in immunology really kind of captivated me. And so I pursued immunology as my graduate degree. So I was working on infectious diseases. While I was there, I should say that I was the Girl Scout plug for cookies on campus. I ran a dog walking and pet boarding service. So like when you say, where does this entrepreneur spirit comes from? I think it was ingrained from my parents. I'm one of 7 children to a librarian and a police officer. There wasn't much money to go around, and I started work very early in life. And also, like, my dad was just a hustler. He always had a side hustle. And I say side hustle, but actually it was hustles. So we sold bread at the local farmer's market. He crocheted. He, was a woodworker and made shelves and doll houses for people to sell. So, I mean, what I observed as a child growing up is that even with your hobbies, there are ways to monetize things that you like to do for fun. And when I was in graduate school, I didn't really go thinking that I would be a consultant or something like that, right? My idea was to really change the face of academia and be a faculty member and encourage the next generation of scientists. But I quickly realized that that was not the track for me. It's not something that interested me. Grant writing is not fun. And it would pain me to live my life that way. That said, I'm very good at being resourceful, finding out information and assimilating that information to solve a problem. And so I found out about consulting, and that kind of had me sold. I realized then that I could leverage my biomedical science training to run companies. And that's how I landed at consulting services, and then being recruited to, co-found and lead as CEO of Dub Biologics.
Thank you. So next, I would like to ask the same questions to Dr. Manvati. Like, where did you get your entrepreneurial spirit, and how did you narrow down your areas in the biotech industry that you want to work on?
I feel that I do not have that much experience that these 2 guys have, and they have had a very focused approach before entering the entrepreneurship model. And I do agree with Williams that entrepreneurship has been, or I would say that entrepreneurship is more of a hustle. And for me, the journey has been slightly different. I have been learning with every step, and frankly, I do not have any idea where I'm going right now also. It's just that I'm just taking the right wind and making the maximum use of opportunities which are coming on the way. When you speak of Clear Meat, it was something which I, 1 year back, 2 years back, had no idea that it will develop into such a format. I was working on a totally different project. I had 2 other setups working on. So I had no dash clue that what I will do, how I will churn out my life, and what would be my agenda of survival. I was just figuring out what is coming up scale and how to make maximum out of it. But parallelly, there were certain challenges. There were certain ways of thinking on the ground. And I feel PhD scholars do get the right exposure when it comes to identifying problems and identifying the right solution. And to be honest, when I completed my PhD, I had only two or three options in front of me. Number one was either to go into academia completely. Number two was to become a sales executive, identify the right research scientist capabilities. Number three was to become a full-time scientist working on some project. Working on in a scientific model, I don't feel I have the right caliber. I'm still in a learning phase. Working as a sales executive, I cannot do that. I seriously cannot do that. I can talk, I can make PPTs, I can show everything, but I cannot do a sales sort of thing. Coming into academia, I tried that. I taught. I was teaching for almost 1.5, 2 years. And in the last a few days of my teaching, I used to sit with my students and have a cup of tea, have discussions, roundtable discussions on the topic that we were doing. So it was not my cup of tea. So parallelly, I thought that it is better. Let's explore the available situations, understand the problems, and let's identify how you can make more sense from the research that we do in lab. It all started with drug discovery for me specifically. I knew certain techniques in biotechnology. I was speaking to various, so I had a habit that I am an introvert, but also an extrovert at the same time. So being a Gemini specifically, it gives me that capability to talk on those lines. I felt I always used to take control or take charge of whatever situation my lab had to present, be it organizing a small event, doing some talks, or doing certain functions at my institute, or figuring out a collaborative work. So I was very pro in all those activities. And this is something PhD has made me teach. In this whole thought process, it gave me the perspective that there are certain common challenges everyone is facing in this industry or in other industries, and it is all interlinked. So to speak on the lines of biotechnology or molecular biology, these are all biological pathways which are connected with each other. So if you are able to figure out the biological pathway that will help you survive, the hustle starts. So this is how I started my journey, and biotechnology was my second baby. My first baby was or in a entrepreneurship setup. At that time, I also did not understand what startups are and how to differentiate a business with a startup. I started, I don't know if this is the right panel to say, but I have almost done or sold bus tickets. I have done that job, not with the idea of making money, just to understand the whole concept. So this thought of entering into any ecosystem, just doing it, gave me the edge to think on those lines. And I'm talking to you guys today.
Thank you, Dr. Manpati. So from the discussion so far, we kind of got the idea, and we also know that in academic settings, we don't get enough training into how to enter this space of entrepreneurship or into startups. So I wanted to ask all the panelists whether you adopted any strategies or used any specific resources that helped you in setting up the startup system. So I'll start with Dr. Amara.
Yeah, so to be honest, I think from talking with many founders over time, and funnily wherever you are, there seem to be the same idea. There isn't really a clear methodology that exists, and you know that you can apply the protocol like in the lab, and then you get a very similar outputs. And reproducibility and so on. It really does not seem to be the case. Too much of a complex system, particularly when you do science and economics. You know, you have science, you have social, you have economics aspect, human aspect. It's highly complex. So I would not say there is a clear methodology, but there is a few points on which you can focus. So I think the main things I found very useful was to first identify talk with people first. Step number one, talk with as many people that you think at some point one day may want to buy something you do. So talking with those people, identify problems, define problems. And I found that a large part of the job was defining properly the problems and then building the right solution or execute to solve those problems. And problems needs to be broken down. So you have big problem. Oh yeah, we want to solve oncology, like great. You want to treat cancer, that's great, but then you have to break that down, which type of cancers, which approach, and then you break that down. And you end up to really small problems that are, how do I sell to the person in the pharma that solution I developed at the end? So this is not another problem. So break down problems. And second, find, what are your strengths around you? So what are your connections? Who is around you? What are your resources? If you are lucky enough to be from a wealthy family, then you don't need to go look for venture capital, for example, but you have to pay people, you have to do things. So how do you finance that? Do you sell a service like Terry, like consulting? Also, that's very clear. You have a service, you have an offering that you can sell, and then you can build up. Or are you doing a product that you are going to sell, but sometimes this product is not ready yet? So you need to find that financing. So how do you go get that? So you need to build these different problems, identify all the problems in your journey, and then solve them one by one. At least that's the only common thread I would say find in there.
So what challenges or learning did you face during setting up the system? How was it?
It's still to this day, it's challenges, like I don't think, I don't know which specific one I would say, but I think the main one has been to very quickly evolve. So things can literally change from a day to another or from a week to another, and don't fall in love with your idea. That's the main thing. And that's something that every founder, everyone tells you. But when you start, I guarantee you that you think you may know a bit better, or like, nah, but I know my thing. No, don't fall in love with the idea or the tech, particularly that we are nerds. We come from a scientific background and stuff, so we love the tech, we love the science. But don't limit yourself to that. Really make sure to understand what people really want and what are they ready to pay for as well, because otherwise it's not sustainable. So what people want and what people are ready to pay for.
I would like to ask the same question to Dr. Manvati. Like, what kind of strategies did you use for setting up the startup system, or what are the resources that you used?
Frankly, I never thought of any strategy to implement on. It was just that the idea of making money hit me somehow. And when you see, I feel that we as PhD scholars do get the experience when it comes to management and what is being taught to people who do proper MBAs. There is a slight difference between what they are taught and what we are taught. But they get an exposure towards how the market evolves, how the finances have to be managed, but they are unable to figure out, or they lack the experience when it comes to understanding the nitty-gritties of any system. We as PhD scholars are always in that zone of identifying small issues in any system, thinking out of box, figuring out certain problems which may come up in the next course of time. This is something which is very required for any person to evolve as a founder. For a strategy that is very specific, which I do not follow actually, but I have an urge, or I feel every founder has an urge to fall in the well of problems and then figure out a solution to it. And I feel it gives a kick to founders that they are finding certain solutions. They may be very minute issues, very minute problems with this very generic solution. But I feel we as founders have the capacity and capability to think in a format where we get the right kick to do it. And that gives the right direction to the whole thought process. Parallelly moving ahead, the idea of all the or the thought process of most of these PhD people that I talk to and that I have been in my journey, we are always in the mode of being ready or being prepared with the next problem. And I think when Adam told about thinking on the finances, the investors, we do not have an exposure on those lines. This is something which we learn with every passing day. And when I speak to any investor right now, every discussion becomes a new example for me to figure out, a new threshold, a new learning for me. And we PhD scholars do have that notion. And to the audience, I would say, if you are in the mindset of identifying problems, identifying solutions, and have the urge to solve something, randomly something, don't stop yourself. You are already halfway through the founder mindset. You can do it. Everyone can do it. Everyone has the capacity, especially PhD scholars. They always have the capacity to do everything. It's just that they are always, I would not say suppressed, but they are always in the zone that they might fail. And as a co-founder, entrepreneurship journey is always about failure. All these failures help us learn and make the right strategy or right move for the next event.
Thank you, Dr. Manpati. So I would now move on to Tere and ask the same questions, like what are the strategies you used and what are the resources that you used for setting up?
Right. So there are some very specific programs that are actually set up to help people in academia spin out. So I'm not sure if people here who are attending this meeting today have heard of the I-Core program. It is offered through the NSF as well as the NIH, and they actually fund what is called customer discovery, which is to Dr. Manvati's point, he mentioned that you have to talk to people, right? So after you've identified the problem, you really want to understand the market. And that really comes from just getting in there and talking to people that are along all of the different channels in that market to make sure that what you perceive to be a problem actually is. And then you want to talk to them about their experiences with the current solutions, because what's the point in putting something out on the market that already exists, right? You really want to make sure that whatever it is that you bring to the market is differentiated in some way that makes you superior. Otherwise, it'd just be another player on the market that won't necessarily capture any value or capture any of the market share. One of the things that Dr. Amata said that is, I completely agree with, which is escaping me at the moment, darn it. I forget exactly what it was that you said, but the majority of the things that you heard already are true. So one of the things that hasn't necessarily been said, but that has been implied is you have to just get in there and start to solve the problems. There's not going to be any startup that's not going to have any issues or have any hurdles that you have to get over, whether it's funding or your tech stopped working or you have to pivot because the solution that you think will solve the problem actually doesn't. So, I mean, the real thing for an entrepreneur really is, and this is what I dropped in the chat, you really have to become enamored with solving the problem, because the way that the problem is solved is going to be changing, not just with your tech as it improves, but with the market as other improvements enter.
Thank you. So I would like to know what kind of challenges did you face while you set up the startup?
Many. To be honest, I think one of the biggest I found personally, and I don't know it is, to be very frank, in the US, but I imagine to an extent, but less, is legal. You know, like the legal aspects are, you cannot imagine the amount of paperwork, particularly as soon as you start talking IP and assets and agreements and partnership. So I think that was generally one of the biggest thing that I had to learn very quickly. And I think, yeah, basically business administration. So that's legal, accounting, because in the end, technology is all right. Of course, you will learn bunch because you realize technology in the real world is different than in the lab in many ways. But still, you know, it's a good lab to start these. But yeah, I think business administration was definitely one of the big ones, and I was lucky to have some support in UK from accelerators and so on, that are also publicly funded. Like we have the Cancer Research UK, stuff like that. That was very helpful. And in the US, I know that you have a lot of programs like that, whether it is freely available like the NSF one, but I know like Nucleate is a very good program for founder-led biotech. I know there is a lot of resources online available from YC, so Y Combinator, from these kind of things that gives you indication on every front, whether it's business, market, discovery, even how to set up a business account and how to set up a D Corp and this kind of stuff. So yeah, I think that's one of the main things I found at the start.
Thank you. So I have the same question for Dr. Siddharth Manvati. Like, what are the challenges you face?
I slightly differ from the idea of raising funds. Frankly, I'm really sorry if I do not agree to your thought. I feel that yes, fundraising is a very hectic job, and it is a challenge that everyone is facing, and it's a constant approach that we have to follow. Apart from managing everything, managing minute issues, finding solutions, but I would like to tell the audience that do not limit yourself to only raising funds. You should think of strategies to make yourself sustainable. It can be doing multitasking. Multitasking, when I speak of, do not bound yourself to only one domain of your entrepreneurship journey, because I have seen, and it has actually helped me, fingers crossed, it has helped me. There have been instances where my funding, I was unable to raise the funding on the right time, but the other projects that were going in the line through the different modules or different setups that we have, they actually helped me survive or pass that phase of valley of death that is normally spoken of in any startup industry. And apart from giving you the sustainability component, doing a multitasking on the lines of founders, it actually helps you understand various situations. So giving you an example, if I speak of my other setups, speaking of ClearMeet, it is as of now more focused into research, more into R&D, and then bifurcating into a business to business, business to customer channel. But 4 years back, if I would be speaking on B2B, B2C, I feel 50%, 60% of the audience does not even know what is B2B, B2C, B2D, D2D. And this is something which is achieved when you try to enter different zones. You figure out ways to survive and interact with a number of people. And there are a number of challenges. Challenges will never stop. And yes, but now I agree that you have to, in this whole journey, you have to work on the front of fundraising also, identify the right investment groups, identify the right incubators. Because see, for a research setup, these incubators will provide you the right launch pad. For anyone who does not have the right exposure, it is very difficult to even speak to the investors or understand the language of investors. The more you get in touch with these fundraising groups, you will be able to understand what investors are, what they are speaking of. But I will tell you, you will, in my initial days, I used to speak to investors, and they used to tell me, yeah, you have a very lovely idea. I am currently running for a meeting, catch up later. Practically, it is a straight away no to the idea. They are rejecting you. But the way they projected it seems, oh, I have been able to get the note and they will talk to me now. But this happens when you talk more and more, and when you interact with these launch pads. And you have to keep yourself open. I had a very bad habit of keeping myself closed when it came to talking to people on the lines of sharing my ideas. As a startup or as a co-founder, you have to realize if your solution is foolproof and you have come up with something which is pretty unique and will do a very breakthrough event, the more you speak to people about it, the more ideas you will have to make it more stronger. It is your own idea, your own way of thinking. And if it is unique and novel, no one else can copy it. So you have to talk more. It can be your friends, families, or anyone across. Don't hesitate in sharing your ideas. This is something we as PhD scholars do not get involved much. We are slightly hesitant and reluctant when it comes to sharing ideas and thinking. So you have to be very open in the whole journey.
Manvat, so I have the same questions for Tere now.
I would echo what's already been said. As someone who is developing a therapeutic, not only do we have to go through clinical trials, but we have to go through regulation to bring our product to market, as far as what the government will accept, as far as cost and price and reimbursement strategies, in addition to the data. So our therapeutic is siRNA based. These are new products. There's only 5 that are approved in the United States. So, you know, we're lucky in the sense that we seem to be at the front end of this, you know, genetic wave as far as therapeutics are concerned, but it's uncharted territory. So we really have to map a lot of these strategies ourselves, because there isn't another company in our therapeutic space, I would say, to model our behavior after.
So there are several questions from the participants, and I was also interested in knowing, so what is the basis that you use to choose the name of your company?
Yeah, on our side, it's self-speaking. I think it's from Alan Turing. So there is a whole story behind, but in our case, it's so actually Alan Turing work finished. He finished his life in Manchester University, where I was doing my PhD at that time, and one of his last work was on the concepts around biology and computation. And actually, a lot of the roots of what we do in our vision is to converge computation and biology. And basically, a lot of the systems and AI concepts that our core AI is based on actually work from Turing. So of course, naturally, we found that Turing was a good name, and biosystems because biological systems is what we work with. So humans being one of the more complex ones, but that touches to cells, to everything. So yeah, that's why.
Thank you. So I would like to ask the same thing to Tere. Like, how did you choose the name for your company?
So I'll just start with Dub Biologics. So at the time, we thought that siRNA were biologics, and Dub, our target for our siRNA therapeutic, is a D-ubiquitinase protein, which the acronym for D-ubiquitinase proteins are Dub. But we're actually not a biologic. So we actually are talking about undergoing a name change here, and we found this out like 2 days ago. Fun fact, it's not appropriate to misname your product. It doesn't convey a lot of confidence to people who you are speaking with that may become stakeholders or potential investors. If you don't know what it is that you're developing, that is a critical sign that you don't know what you're doing. So we are mortified to have found that out. What are siRNA? So siRNA, it's chemically synthesized. It's not something that we harvest from a live cell. So that excludes us from the biologic criteria. And so we found that out, like I said, 2 days ago, and we have to change. As far as the consulting company, I am quite religious. I get this from my father, but it's a reminder to myself to have faith in my reads, my gut instinct. And Simon Peter was the only other person to walk on water before he hesitated and cried out to Jesus. So that's what that means.
Thank you. Thank you. So I was wondering, like, I have this question from lots of participants, like, how is your brand or product different from the other ones in the same field? So I was asking this question to Tere.
Yeah, so a lot of the RNA therapeutics that are available on the market are either introducing a protein, so they're solving genetic diseases. For the siRNA proteins, or not proteins, siRNA therapeutics that are on the market, they're really solving hyper niche disease areas like, I don't know, off the top of my head, I can't remember, but our target is different because it's actually been implicated in the top 10 global diseases. So we actually think that this has the potential to be kind of the aspirin of a next generation therapeutic. So there's obviously quite a bit of market sizing that we've done as far as who this would be appropriate for. But essentially, if you think of fibrosis, this is what we are trying to cure, one disease indication at a time. So we're not going to go to clinic with all of these fibrotic diseases, right? We're going to start, I believe, in the eye, and then we're going to move into skin and then liver.
Thank you, Tere. So I would like to move to Dr. Manuvati. So I would like to know, how did you choose the name for your company?
See, we, after doing several mistakes of my other groups, we realized that there is a way of naming any company. So we followed certain ground rules. The name should be simple to remember. It should be as short as possible, as connectable as possible, not with your product. It is not mandatory that it should define your product, but it should be more connecting to the audience or your end consumer. So, and apart from that, the color combination of your product, how the logo is made, plays a very vital role on the eyes. And the more the name is easier to remember, the more catchy the color is, your half of the journey when it comes to brand building is done. So this is something that we followed, and yes, this is where we are.
And also, I was wondering, how did you make sure that your company or your product is different from the other ones in the same field?
So that is basically done after doing what PhDs do: a lot of review of literature, understanding, identifying commons, and what others are doing, trying to figure out how others are solving the problem and what is different in their strategies, how novel the whole concept can be. So doing more due diligences when it comes to understanding others, being more friendly to your competitors. Never underestimate your competitor, and your competitor will always give you the right advice and the right guidance. So just be close to your competitor as much as possible, and parallelly understanding the demand of the consumer, what the consumer wants. So as Adam already identified, the legal issues, IPs, it's a huge challenge for any founder. He has to keep a track of everything, what he says, how he says, what others are saying about the company. But apart from this, there are policy making issues. So you have to be very pro in understanding what policies are about to come, how the government is thinking, how the consumers are getting impacted with the current policies, what is the notion in the whole area, because that gives you an understanding of the product, not specific when it comes to research, but generally speaking, because it gives you an idea of what different you can do to your strategy to make it more productive on the consumer front.
So I was interested in learning about your long-term goals and how do you plan to contribute to the scientific world? So I was asking this to Dr. Manupati.
So the long-term goals, see, my vision personally is, so there's a very, it comes from a drug discovery module. It is figuring out strategies that we can make certain ways that people are not dependent on artificial or chemically synthesized drugs. It is something to do more with respect to how they eat and what environmental factors govern their survival. And yes, let's be very honest, we are out here to make money. Don't put this on the side. This is a very common and very significant agenda. We are always working on the lines of making money. That's the prime aspect. We are in a co-founder or founder space. But keep our vision has been to have a good night's sleep by the end of the day, so that we have the right strategies in place, and I am answerable to myself. At least my soul should be answerable to what we are doing, and bringing out more robust ways or solutions that are more customer friendly. It's all part of the journey.
Thank you, Dr. Manupati. So I would like to ask the same question to Tere. What is the long-term plan and how do you plan to contribute to the scientific world?
I think bringing a therapeutic to the market that really is accessible. So keeping the cost as low as possible. Like I mentioned earlier, if we really truly see ourselves as the aspirin of next generation therapeutics, think about how many people take aspirin. If we're playing the long-term game as far as volume of sales, there's absolutely no reason why we should be charging what the current market rate for siRNA platforms currently is. And I think for siRNA, I think the cheapest one on the market for a year of treatment is $7,000 to $8,000. So, I mean, we could go that route, but again, as the good doctor said, you want to be able to sleep well at night, knowing that you've, really contributed to society and not become the next farmer bro.
So today I was wondering, in addition to the skills that you acquired during your PhD from your academic settings, what additionally what additional or other necessary skills you require for being in the position that you are in?
Right. So I think as an entrepreneur, the biggest skill that you need to just have in your tool bag is the ability to take risk. This whole gig is a risky game, right? There's no guarantee that your product is going to be the solution that is adopted. There's no guarantee that when you get it through, for example, clinical trials and bring it to market, that clinicians will actually want it, even though they told you at the time or years ago that they would. So, I mean, if you're okay with taking risk, or if you're, really into risky types of gambles, then I think that, entrepreneurship might be a career that is for you. There are ways to mitigate risks. A lot of the job and role of a CEO is to have the forward vision, and the business development people really try to help you take away as much risk as possible for that end game. Courage, I mean, it wasn't really courage. It was really kind of like, I didn't want a boss because I'm quite old already, and there's ageism that is a very real thing. I also wanted to have flexibility on where I was living. I'd also thought about the volunteer work that I had done at that point. It was 3 years of back-to-back projects as a volunteer consultant. If I was already in the market working for a big firm, I would have been promoted to associate consultant by that time. And so it really made me gag thinking about applying to a job that I was overqualified for. So, I mean, I wouldn't necessarily call it courage. I think that life experience really has taught me that everything that you have ever done in your life can be leveraged to contribute to what you have to offer in one way or another on your CV or resume. And there are lots of YouTube channels that are dedicated to teaching you how to identify what those skills are and how to talk about them in a way that's going to get you hired. So I would encourage people that are here to try that out, test it out, apply for jobs that you don't even care about, just to have that, interview experience and learn how to negotiate. It's not necessarily courage, I would say. It's just I'm fed up with the way that the world works, and I'm not afraid to go out and see a different model that might work better for me. I'm not saying it works for everyone. I'm just saying for me, I'm pretty opinionated, and that's not always seen as a good thing, but I don't have to answer to anyone or to many people at the moment. So again, it's working for me.
The same question for Dr. Manvati. In addition to the skills that you acquired through your academic training, what additional necessary skills you required for your position?
One has to be, I will totally agree with Williams that one has to be very self-centric in this whole journey. One cannot do justice to every one's need. One cannot satisfy everyone's thought, but one has to first satisfy his own demand and be more realistic in the approach. And this is something which normally PhD scholars are slightly reluctant to do. And we tend to lose our confidence and patience when it comes to taking risks. We have always been nurtured in a way that all PhD scholars have the intention to take risks, huge risks. But when it comes to financial things, we take a step back. This is something which we need to learn, that if you are confident with your concept, it is you who has to deliver. No one else will judge you. It is you who has to judge yourself. So be more confident in the whole thought process and take the risk and do the jump. You will fail once, but have the mentality of failing at least thrice, 4 times, 5 times. But the day will come when you will succeed. So you have to be prepared with the mentality of getting more failures in the journey. This is pretty hard, but you have to prepare yourself for failures.
Thank you. So with that, in the last few minutes, we would like to discuss about the job responsibilities in your position versus how it is in academia. So I'd first like to ask Dr. Amara, what does your day-to-day job look like?
I'm on calls all day, every day. And if I'm not making calls and learning more information, from someone that's in the distribution chain or the manufacturing chain of my market, then I'm learning something new. As co-founder and CEO of a company that doesn't employ anyone, I am the marketing director, I am the PR person, I am the social media manager, I am the productions officer. Every task is something that you yourself have to handle unless you have the money to outsource it. So what I would say, if you have a little bit of money and you can, academic internal grants, I think, to help innovations from a university, right? Sometimes they're $5,000, $10,000. You can get your hands on some of that. Find some people who can take some of these tasks off of your hands, and don't be afraid to delegate, because you can't do it all. The more you try to pay attention to these other things, like, for example, paying taxes, like I would rather, choke on something. I don't know. It's the most boring job, but it must be done. You know what I mean? So outsourcing that to people that can help you, that are in your price range or the budget that you have, is really important. So finding those people to partner with and keeping them along your journey is really critical. Identify those people early if you can.
So that's just like also work. So how does your work-life balance look like in your position?
I don't sleep. There is no balance for now. So the hope is that at some point that this will be a lucrative, type of thing when we sell the company off, that I will make a sizable enough exchange selling my stock or something, and I'll be able to retire early. That's the risk. But for now, I don't sleep.
So currently in your position, how do you evaluate your progress?
That's a really excellent question. I'm not sure if this question was for me. I'm sorry. Was it for me?
Just for you. Yeah.
Oh, okay. So I think either as a biotechnology company, because it's so abstract, right? You want to get from your IP, if you even have your IP in an academic setting, through clinical trials. There are major steps along the way, and each of those major steps have tons and tons, hundreds, if not, thousands of tinier, smaller steps, right? So the big major steps are the big milestones, like your seed A round, or even, for example, for us, we have written a direct to phase 2 grant in the amount of $1.8 million, which is pending, right? That's really going to help us jumpstart our business development, but we don't have that money yet. So in the meantime, we are doing the national I-Corps programs. We are applying to other internal grants, innovation grants, these accelerators that have been talked about earlier. These are resources where you have VCs, you have people with money, you have people who have been in your space before, who can help you assimilate more information much more quickly into what your next steps should even be.
Thank you, Tere. So I would like to ask the same questions to Dr. Amara. So how does your day-to-day job look like?
Yeah, it's quite different from academia now. Quite a bit of people management, because we have people, so you need to organize things. So because I'm basically acting CEO, I have to work on many fronts because we are small, but we raised a significant amount of money. So that means you need to manage your finance, you need to manage the people. You also make sure things are communicating internally and externally. So you also manage investors. You manage the relationship to customers and to partners, and also looking for more customers, potential other investors. So yeah, it's a lot of relationship management as it is, and I still dedicate a significant portion to R&D and technology development, because I want to be in touch with the product. But that means also as you say, the work-life balance is not really a balance. And to be very frank, I think when you're a founder or you have your company, it's a bit of an illusion to think you're gonna have work-life balance, because technically work and life are one. It's not, you are not working for someone, you are not working an external entity, and you can be like, oh, it's just the boss. And I'm French, so we have a lot of holidays and we have a lot of advantage. At least my employees do. But I don't apply all of them to myself. But it's good for the people that are employed. But as a person, you have a responsibility to yourself, to your investors. You need to make a return on investments. You have a responsibility to your customers and to your employees. You need to be sure that you will be paying them in the next X months. So yeah, I think that's it.
So thank you. So the same question for Dr. Manuvati.
Anindya, my first response would be, how dare you ask founders that what is the work-life balance? Who gave you the authority to ask this? You ask us what is the work-life balance. We have totally lost our life. So it is for us every time, either phones, either meetings, or either talking to people. On a very lighter note, there is no work-life balance, and it is pretty hard to manage everything. So it is a founder, which Adam also said, that he has to do multiple things. As founder, it is our job and responsibility that we know everything. We are aware of everything, from even how the lab is being set up or what reagent is getting finished, to talking to our stakeholders and understanding their needs. As a founder, we cannot reach out or we cannot manage everything. William also said that we need to give out our jobs to other people, but we need to be aware of everything that is happening in our vicinity. We need to be aware of everything socially, politically, and in a business setup is happening, and how it can impact us, and keep our toes always open. And this is where we literally forget our life. It is not that we are doing it deliberately, but because it is something which we have taken an onus to achieve something. And I feel every founder out here, apart from doing good to himself, is always thinking how he or she will provide the right strength and support to his right team, and provide them the right way or guide them the right way, so that they do not do the mistakes that the founder has done. And this is something which we are always gearing up, and it helps us manage everything.
So what is the one thing that you love about your job? Or not the one thing, like what it is that you love about your job?
In my case, I frankly have a very bad habit of entering into problems, and I try to find problems. So I love finding problems and finding solutions. And this gives me the right strength to keep myself awake. Otherwise, I'm a very bad sleeping person. I'm a very lazy person when it comes to being lazy, I think, which every founder is. But when it comes to work, I can do work, but I cannot stay idle. So this is something that keeps me on my toes.
Yeah. So I'm going to ask you this one question, like, what is the one thing about academic training that you would like to change, or you would think it would have been different, so that it would help you in making the transition more easier?
More industry interactions. The more industry interactions would have really helped us understand how the industry makes note of various things. And academia puts you in a very lazy spot. It gives you a very lazy attitude to whatever you are doing. And industry is totally working in a different pace. We have hourly timelines to achieve. Academia has monthly timelines, 6 monthly timelines, which does not work in an industry. So this is a transition which I normally feel with my team also. I have a team of PhD scholars. I feel that the more new ones I get into my team, they are unable to cope up with the whole speed. And this can only be done if we had the right exposure, right interaction with industry. And I think it is happening now. We missed it, but now it is happening, but more is required.
Thank you. So I want to ask the same question to Tere. Like, what would you recommend? Like, what change would you recommend for the academic setting so that it would make the transition easier?
I mean, it would be great if in an academic setting, a lot of these resources were provided, but unfortunately, it's not going to be the case for everyone, right? So I think that as a student or someone that's interested, the onus is really on you to seek out people who are innovators within your academic university or college, and just go along for the ride. I mean, like, you don't understand the amount of work that there is with these projects. You don't have to be a part of the lab. There are business development skills that you can learn working with them to better understand their market, the segmentation of the market, any, competitors, the competitor intelligence, those PowerPoints or that research you could drum up. So, I mean, that's getting into consulting and learning what consulting is, but academics, it's a really hard job, especially for a faculty member to, do all of the whatever science that they're doing in the lab and manage the students and postdocs that they have in the lab, to then pivot and turn attention to this business development stuff. So if you're interested in the entrepreneurship aspect, find a faculty member that needs help and offer up your extra time. I think that's the literal best way to get real world experience. And it's a crash course because the learning curve is really, really high, but you'll be rewarded in the skills that you come out with. And for help with how to do the tasks that you're asked to do, YouTube University, everything that you need to know is available on YouTube.
So how much scope of research do you have in your present job as compared to academia? And is there anything of the academic setting that you are going to miss, or you think you will miss?
So I actually am still a staff scientist. So right now, because we're participating in this NSF National I-Corps program, it's expected that we will use like a full hour or a full-time job in the program. And the program actually supports you with a stipend for the 2 months that it runs. But I still consult on experiments that are happening in the lab. I use consult because I'm not physically present in the lab, but I also do physically experiments in the lab when I have time. So it's not often, it hasn't been as much as I'd like. And that's something that we didn't anticipate either, right? But we've had to adjust. But after I graduate, things will pick up much more for me in the laboratory.
Thank you. So I would like to ask the same question to Dr. Amara.
What I miss from academia, you mean?
Yeah, so what is the scope of research in your current position, whether it is different from academia, or if there are anything in the academic setting that you're missing?
Yeah, it's quite different from academia in the sense where when I was in academia, I could pursue, and that's the main thing, only thing I actually miss, that's all. I could pursue more random ideas, like you have a random idea about this or that pathway that may be involved in something, and then you can just go and pursue it for a couple of months. It's fine, Best case, you get a paper. Worst case, it's another page in your PhD thesis. And you cannot do that in a company. You're not going to waste that time and money. It's too precious. So unless if you reach a massive scale, that's something else. But you become Sergey Brin and this kind of people at Google. So that's not for now. But yeah, basically that's it. That's the only thing I miss. And otherwise, you have to be very focused on what you're building. You cannot just go research for research. It has to be research for something.
Yeah, thank you. So I would ask the same thing to Dr. Manvati now.
I seriously miss the laziness of the academia because during my academic days, we were able to enjoy our life better. But now, but apart from these jokes, academia, yes, Adam rightly said, it gives you the notion of thinking of something which may not have any sense, but it might give you a publication. But in industry, we cannot think on those lines. My every penny has to be spent on something which will give me some return, financial return, not publication return. So this is something which we have realized, and this we do miss because academia gives us the edge to think on something weird, but we do miss on these lines. But at the end of the day, it's something which we have to live by.
So we are almost, I think we are past the time. So I'm on to last question. So do you have any advice or suggestions for the attendees and early career scientists who are interested in your career path? So I'll start with Dr. Amara.
If you're interested in this path, don't wait for it to fall on your lap. To be honest, I had no training in this or anything. I had to go and look for it. I had to go and look for information. We're in the age of information. It's all over the place. So there is no real excuse to say I had absolutely no idea, could not find info. You don't need to go dig for a book in the library. You can, but it's not like back then where you had to. It's on your phone. It's literally, you just look on TikTok or Instagram and you will see actually people sharing advice on business. So technically, if it's generally something you want, yeah, go get it. Otherwise, it's cool if you don't. There's plenty of cool jobs, plenty of nice things to do in life that don't require you being an entrepreneur. Don't be just don't do it because it's sexy, because it's not sexy. Do it because you really want to do it, or want to try. It's fine if you just want to try too, it's cool. But yeah, that's it.
Yeah, the same question I would like to ask to today.
Yeah, so if you don't feel like you are at a point in your life where you can take so much risk, or you don't have enough or as much quote unquote courage, then I would encourage seeking a career in consulting. I think that it's really underestimated how many consultants end up running a lot of tech companies, right? So as a consultant, you are solving other businesses' problems. And so you learn and start to assimilate what industries are like and what trends are in industries and how to recognize those trends and solve problems or stay ahead of these trends, right? To keep up and with the industry's changing market and to keep supporting the bottom line. So all these companies really want to make money. So whether it's reducing overhead to increase profits or increasing sales to increase profits, those are things that you can learn, and in doing so, you can identify problems that have yet to be solved by yourself as a consultant or other consulting agencies that you might get an idea for a business for. So it pays well, you learn a lot, you work a lot, so you start to learn how to live without that work-life balance. But if you are interested in a career in entrepreneurship, I would start with learning business 101 from a consulting standpoint. You can also go to school and get an MBA, but who wants more school after a PhD? Not me. So.
Yeah, I'll move to Dr. Manvati now.
I will agree with both of these guys. And I would say that if you want to start, just start doing it. Don't wait for anything. You will never find the right environment to start it. So and you have to keep yourself always open to learning. Don't think that you have done it and you have achieved it and now the job is done and it will be easy. It will never be easy. You have to keep yourselves open to learning.
Thank you very much. So on behalf of GSS Career Development Subcommittee, I would like to thank all the panelists and attendees for participating in today's discussion. We look forward to your inputs and feedbacks after the workshop to help us organize the events in future, keeping your interests in mind. Once again, thank you all, and we hope to see you again in our next workshop Wednesday event. So with that, I would end the event. Thank you so much.
Thank you, everyone. Thank you.
Thanks. Bye-bye.
Bye.